Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon and you're very welcome to this. It's a podcast and it's all about the Irish League. And I don't know if you've heard, but it's coming back. 12 top flight teams all vying to get their club's coloured ribbons right round that Gibson Cup come May time, and we are going to preview each of those teams' chances going into the season 25-26. We'll recap the big transfers, we'll fill you in on anything you may have missed this summer, as everything you need to know is right here, as this is your ultimate guide to another campaign of Irish League football on the season premiere podcast of another weekly edition of Kick and Match. Well, here we are once again, season 4 of Kicking Match, and it is an absolute privilege that you've decided to join me for the big one. It's the big bumper season preview show. It's not just me, Peter. I am joined by my usual wrecking crew. They're now making this an annual event. They're the two boys from around the grounds, and I. First, he's a man. He's very much like my Chandler Bing. Even the people in his own work don't know what he does. It's Joe McCallion.
Great to be back, Peter.
It's great to be back, Joe. And in the blue corner, as he always is, he's the type of boy that Sabrina Carpenter writes songs about. It's Ross Welsh.
I'm buzzing with that. Welcome back.
Welcome back indeed. I feel like this is slightly earlier than usual. I'm sure dates would somewhat indicate that we're there. But looking ahead to this season, I know last year was a topsy-turvy, all over the place kind of league. And this upcoming one, particularly in the middle, feels like we're going down potentially a very similar path.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Certainly in the middle, but also for me, when we get to the predictions, the top isn't settled at the moment either.
So for those who do not know, what is going to happen right now is that me and my fine two guests are going to go through every single top flight team, all 12 of them. We're going to talk about all the transfer moves that they've made, and we're going to go through what expectations are. What will be a good season, what will be a bad season, and then finally, where we expect them to be come the end of the season. And the great thing about this is that we have it all down on record, and we'll review it in 9 months' time. But we've got to get our predictions down first. This has made us a fool at many times, and sometimes it makes us feel pretty good about ourselves. And the way we're going to decide our order is a little bowl in front of me, and I'll just pick it at random. But before we get onto these teams, let's just talk generally about where we are in the Irish League going into the season 2025-2026. Not a huge amount has changed, has it? Like, there's been some big moves at some of the big teams, but we still don't have summer football, and it doesn't look like there's any chat about it happening anytime soon. The stadium funding hasn't happened. That may happen any day now, potentially, just to add more intrigue to the start of the season. Who knows? Or we might not know it before Christmas. Yet, it's the same old things. The good thing is that last year we were poo-pooing about how bad Europe was. This year, it's been kind of okay.
Yeah, hard to know until you sort of look back at it, because obviously we were chatting around this time and, we were ready to never go into Europe again. And then Larne pulled off maybe the best definitely the best Irish League European season ever. So I'm kind of middling at the minute, and then just depending on how the next couple of ties go, sort of defines whether I think it's good or a bad year.
It'd be pretty okay, pretty good actually, Joe, I would say, if it wasn't for the fact that your Reds somewhat stunk out the joint again for a second season on the bounce.
Well, yeah, you could say we stunk out the place, but the refereeing performance in both legs, I think, had a lot to do with that.
Well, it was the carcass of that Reds team that still was hanging on going into Europe. Another year where perhaps you weren't putting your best foot forward. One slight change, and we'll see how it plays out, is that through whatever mechanisms that they have, is that the Irish League can now change things up when it comes to days. So they got something passed where pretty much teams can opt in or opt out of the games being scheduled at whim by the Irish League. So what we're expecting is that maybe more Sunday games will happen, perhaps, but also what may happen, and we'll see if they dip their toe into this over the next couple of weeks and months, is that Jared Lawler's very much in love with this idea of a weekend of football. We're getting a bit of it in the first weekend of the season, but how would you feel about Thursday night games? More Monday night games?
I don't think anybody's really a fan of Monday night games, and I don't know if there's a great outcry for some Thursday night games. I can't think of another league that really does it. The NFL, but I believe like the Thursday night game sort of is the worst of the weekend. So it's a strange one. I mean, like yes, it maybe starts your weekend off, but like same as Monday, you're going into work the next day. You can't fully enjoy it that way. And then imagine your team gets beat on Thursday and that's you to the following Sunday. Like that's horrendous.
Well, we'll see if it more is about the Sunday games, if it's maybe changing things up on Saturday. Some people have lamented the whole Larne push for Fridays. They didn't get as much of a chance to do that last season. Will they return to form this year? Portadown seem to be the team that like to either play their games on Friday evenings or more. They're like the Saturday 5:30 kind of team, which I've been able to do two games at once. Sometimes where I've like maybe been covering a Glenavon game and then I've slipped down to Portadown with you boys and watch the second game. That's kind of been fun. But there's no doubt, because we're a couple of years properly into this now, Friday night stream game, big fans, and has very much been such a success story of the past few years and has been a tone setter for many a weekend. Yes, it does have an impact on many big games not being played on the Saturday 3 p.m, which I enjoy that window. I love the drama of it. Obviously, I'm a part of the broadcasting of it every other week, let's just say. And there's something to that. But in turn, getting maybe two games, let's say, across the weekend, there's something nice about that, even if one is just watching it via stream or TV.
Yeah, without a doubt, I struggle to see the downside of a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday game in terms of a fan perspective. I don't know why you wouldn't be over the moon that that's now a pretty, possible option that we're going to see that almost every weekend. As you say as well, those Saturday half 5 games gives the option for the clubs to benefit, getting people into the social club or a few drinks after. So as you say with Portadown, I know that's certainly something they sort of chase.
Let's look ahead now to the season, at least in the top flight, 2025-26. Maybe I'm totally off the mark here, but there's a general feeling in my head, and it's maybe because a lot of business was done in January in preparation for hitting the ground running, both in Europe and then this upcoming season. But this upcoming campaign in particular feels a bit like 24-25 Part 2.
Yeah, definitely. It almost feels like the summer of the pre-contract. A lot of business was done on July the 1st, and the big story should be sort of Colerane's takeover and what are they going to do. But I guess you could say they've done it in a savvy way. They've got their business done early. They've paid the fees to get boys in that half a season earlier, and it kind of has been a little bit quieter on the Western Front in a transfer sense, but still a bit of time in the window left, and if some European rounds progress, there's a little bit more money coming in there.
That's going to be my excuse, Joe, is that, oh, they added that brilliant player or two, and that's why my prediction was 8 places off.
Yeah, I think I sat on that one quite a bit after last season's predictions, and I could certainly see the same happening again this season.
Oh, I forgot to say, they've made the League Cup more important by giving it an access to the European playoff thing. I don't know if that was universally accepted as a good thing or a weird thing. It feels a bit Belgium football to me.
I don't know if I quite like it, but I don't mind it. It's a little bit different, isn't it? And it does add a little bit more.
Well, that's what I mean. It's a bit
It's something.
raging apathy.
Yeah, it's like it's if they give just the winner of the League Cup a European spot, that's far too far for me.
I agree.
This is like your happy medium, and if you end up with like a Ballymena or a Glenavon who probably aren't going to get into the European playoff, if they get in there that way, it's a big chance for them, isn't it?
Yeah, like it was good for that wee team that got through the playoff, Joe, to have a wee trip to Europe and back, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just like to see the sun and back again. There wasn't too much else involved in that.
Right, first of 12, and away we go, and we're starting off big. Joe, I don't know if you want to start off with Cliftonville, but that's exactly what we're doing. They fell out of the top 6 last year, and they come into this season with all the hallmarks of what happened last summer. They lose some of their best players. We don't see many coming in. Europe doesn't go well, and you, like many fans, are sitting here crossing your fingers that there's going to be some random players brought in late on who do the business. Now, of course, there's this big lurking shadow, but it's like a happy shadow that we are expecting this Canadian takeover to happen eventually, but we're in this awkward place where it just hasn't happened yet, like purgatory, where Cliftonville haven't really made the big splash that some people are expecting them they could do, but they're not even making any splash at all. What's the overall mood in North Belfast, Joe?
Yeah, it's a very similar feeling to, as you mentioned earlier, the stadium funding where it's a party there, but God knows at what point that's coming through. Is it going to be tomorrow? Is it going to be towards the end of the season? God knows. Um, Coming in to this sort of summer transfer window, I had high expectations because of that. I thought this could be a real good sort of couple of years for Jim, having proper backing. Going to be great for the club, the stadium, the ideas they all had. And it just feels like last season almost hasn't ended. Like it just kind of feels like we're continuing into this next season with the same.
I thought that's what we said last year.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's been a couple of years now of this same story. Only looking at the squad, there's just even more players who have left again. And there's some names in there who necessarily wouldn't have wanted to go. Shea Kearney, especially, that's a huge loss. And of course, we're doing the odd bit of business. We seem to be doing a wee tiny bit more now. How Reece Campbell came in the other day.
I like that a lot.
It's a great signing. It's a really good signing. Strange from Coleraine, considering all the chasing they were doing, but I suppose with all the signings they've made, I guess it makes sense for them. Yeah, I really don't know how to feel about us. I would love there to be more transfers, but I have a real bad suspicion that there won't be.
Does that then set you up for a season of just middling, try and not drop too far? The youth that's in the squad, it's about developing them, getting a bit more team cohesion, because I appreciate that Reds fans in particular know that they're not expected to be knocking on the door and beating Larne and Linfield week in and week out. But you don't want to be on the wrong side of a 3, 4, 5 game winless run either.
No, absolutely not. And it's a bit of a tough place to be in to say that we're suddenly looking to, rebuild again after winning the Irish Cup a couple of years ago and going into the following season should have been better. And to take those steps back and then to look like we're going to sort of stagnate or hopefully not go back any further is a rough place to be in. And Jim's going to have to do a lot with the group of players that he has to try push on. I think we'll do better than last season overall. We were knocked by quite a few different things last season. I think we'll do better. But even at that St. Joseph's game, looking to the bench, the amount of youth, like it was only youth players essentially warming up. So it's gonna be it's gonna be really interesting to see how we start and where we go from there.
There's a lot of outs,
I love it.
and with that, not all of them were exactly first team nailed on players. Like I think we all knew that the likes of Lowe and Ojo were going to move on for various different reasons, but Axel Peisel doesn't come back, and then you lose two players. Look, Shea Kearney was one of the bright sparks in the league, but to lose him and Sean Stewart in the same summer when those two were going to be your width. Are we expecting a formation change as well? Because I don't know where Reece Campbell fits in. I know why you'd want to fit him in, but I don't see him as a striker, and you've been playing wing backs for so long. Is that what he's going to do? Like this weird Joel Cooper style, hang about the halfway line and try and break through there? Because that's not really his game.
No, it's not, but I also don't see Jim changing his game. He came in with a plan and he stuck to that plan right from the outset. And I don't see him changing now. So I do think it will be a case of, having Reece sort of adapt into a different role potentially. You talk about those two players in Chris Lowe and Sean Stewart. They were, for me, they didn't play too much last season. Obviously, Chris Lowe wasn't really favoured by Jim, but a huge, huge loss. And it doesn't look like we're really doing anything to replace that type of player. Obviously, as I say, Jim wasn't playing with him, but having that ability to be able to bring on someone like him, losing that is going to be a real struggle this season.
So this looks to be the season for a player I quite like, where Micheál Glynn needs to step up and make his name in a Cliftonville shirt. Clearly, Reece Campbell's been given the back in number 7 shirt. That's a big transfer from Coleraine. I like that. We'll have the Joe Gormley conversation till the cows come home. But you add in Connor Falls from Huddersfield Town, there'll be a significant amount of expectation that he's going to be a contributor quite quickly. outside of that, you're kind of waiting to the end of this transfer window, as you did a bit last year, and hoping these players fall through the cracks. Because look, Cliftonville are an attractive club for players who are looking to come in and move on. You're trying to pick up the Sean Stewarts of old, and there was movements in January. McWoods had his flair moments when he comes in. Might not be a player you want to have nailed on as a starter, but he got goals. I like Keeney at the back for sure. And here comes Leopard, who was pretty much injured for the entirety of the season, to add something back there. Can Casey build himself up a bit more? So there is good, I think, top six players. But Ross, if you were someone that was waving about a red and white scarf on a Saturday afternoon, would you really believe in your heart of hearts that top six is something that they're going to get?
Just about yes, because a limited squad, sure, but the squad that they have is it's made up of good players. Rory Hale drive them on. I think Joe Gormley's in for another good season. Reece Campbell, what a signing that is. He was in big demand at one point, so that's a great signing. And you just have to say you have to back Jim to sort of push it on despite the sort of limited stuff he's working with.
What's a bad season for Cliftonville? It is seventh bad. They're the one team that probably feels like the biggest banana skin here, because the deal could go through in the next few days and all of a sudden they're spending like Man City when they first took over, and there's big names coming in, right? So we could feel a bit silly here. But like a seventh disaster.
I think seventh without a cup would probably be a disaster, to be honest. I know, no, yeah, I'm going to stick to that. I was going to change my mind there, but no, I think when
I don't think it is, but
it just, there's a, I think it's just a status thing mostly, and then based on where we were
I agree.
seasons ago, it will feel poor to be finishing in seventh without any sort of even a final. I'm really clutching at straws all of a sudden, aren't I? But no, I do think it would be.
Let's talk about the strengths last year. 11 wins at home. That's pretty good. 8 away. It's can you stay fit, because this is a thin squad, and just shape-wise it felt slightly all over the place. And look, you've been beautiful to watch over the past few years, but perhaps not that effective. It's hard to doubt Cliftonville, because I do like that back line of yours. I'm saying seventh. But it's the one where if I'm looking back and it's fifth, I'm like, well, yeah, fair enough. They are, I think, I have to accept, Joe, they're a middle class team in this league.
It's tough to hear that, Peter. I'll not lie to you. It's very tough to hear that.
No, it's a bigger middle class team, middle class area than before, but
Yeah.
is that fair, Ross?
It's fair, and then I've seen Cliftonville fans on Twitter saying that they're in a relegation battle. And
No.
yeah, I agree, because Cliftonville are probably the team I watch the second most in the league. And like just looking at them, that is not relegation fodder. And I don't know if it's just people getting caught up in the moment, as I've done myself. Don't get me wrong about my own team, but there's no way they have any business being in a relegation battle. And can you imagine them ending up in a playoff against like Welders? They put 5 or 6 past them.
Yeah, no,
There's far worse teams in Cliftonville. They're pretty good at the back. They're well coached. It will just be that little bit of frustration of, if Gormley's out, is McWoods going? Is Falls going to be the man? Reece Campbell, is it tiki taka all over the place? And then Glenavon steal a late goal from a corner, and it's 1-1, and or you lose at home, for example. That's probably where the topsy turvy Cliftonville games will be. I think Cliftonville are one of those teams who will take points off the teams really going for it at the top, but it'll be plenty of those. This is how I see October. It was close against Team X, Linfield, Coleraine, but then you lose the Carrick away, and then you draw at Portadown, and you're thinking, what's going on here?
yeah. Well, that kind of was the story the last couple of seasons. And look, going to what you said there about adding more goals, it's not just about that for me. It's more about adding more personnel who can score goals. It was too focused on Joe last season. He's getting older. He still has it, of course, but if he gets injured, if he's out for a while, we struggle so much. So the additions of
It's Hale playing at number 6 as well. You don't want them there.
no, exactly. Well,
You
that's
want
true.
them
Our midfield
8
for a
or
couple of
10.
seasons now has been a real sticking point. So look, as you say, here's hoping the money comes in. But at the moment, based on what we have and the hopes that something's coming, I have us in fifth.
I think just on the money, it's too late anyway. If the money were to come in tomorrow, I think it's too late. All the good business has been done and you end up panicking. I've got them sixth.
We're pretty much in agreement of where they are. It will just be once. I think the reality of that for Cliftonville fans will feel a lot more tough than what outsiders will view that as. Good results here, bad results there. The players might come in, and hey, come January when you're being linked with player X and Y and Z, maybe it'll all go away. The one worry for me, for them, is that if the home form dips, everything falls through. That's where I could really feel like you're struggling. You're behind the 8 ball, 4 points off sixth place. That's very difficult, and that'll not feel like a nice place for Cliftonville fans. But yes, fifth, sixth, and seventh across the board. We go back in.
Do a cup run for us, Peter?
Do you want a cup run?
Do you see a cup run for us?
No.
Not at all.
Well, maybe, but I think you're just going to be so week to week.
Yeah.
I don't see you getting beaten by Ards away, for example, in the League Cup, but I can just see between name your top three teams, you get drawn against them, and that's you out in the quarterfinals.
Yeah,
So
that's what's making me think it could be more of a cup run team in terms of week to week. He's done it last 2 seasons.
they're a team that are a bit more assured. Like there's some teams that are pretty much like a magic 8 ball, and they either turn up or they don't, and they can turn on the magic. Cliftonville are a bit more, the sugar-free cereals. Like they're good for you and they're grand in the long term, but they might not have as many peaks
Yeah,
as others. So
brilliant analogy.
Do you know what concerns me though? They're built off that support. And see when St. Joseph's went in front in the first minute extra time, ground died to death. So 29 minutes to get your European season back on track, and hopefully it already wasn't signs of apathy and no.
Joe, would you shake my hand for sixth and two semi-finals?
Oh,
That's you bite
yeah,
your hand
I
off, man.
would. I would. Realistically, I would.
You're just waiting for Santa Claus to come. That's what it is. You're waiting until January where you can start dreaming about player X or player Y. Very, very different days. We're continuing this strong start, but then there's a lot of great teams in this league right now. Crusaders. Here's what I'd say about the Cruise. If anybody is saying defiantly they know exactly what this Cruise team are going to be this season, they're either a liar or they're braver than I am, because this is just a complete unknown. The Crusaders teams we knew from years gone by are pretty much gone, bar Jordan Owens hanging on. Like, I would struggle off the top of my head to give you their 11. I'd stick Charlotte Rourke at left back, maybe Tuffy as their goalkeeper, centre backs, don't know, strikers. A Scottish person, I think, is currently the answer there. They tried this last year. It failed at times. It worked at times. This is not Declan Cadell's rookie season anymore, so there is a bit more expectation. I am expecting a step back and maybe a significant one, but the Cruise, they can surprise you. And maybe some of these players are the Kieran Offords that they had last year. I liked Ty Franklin. He's gone. We all know that Offord left in January. But I just can't tell you if these are duds or stars. And that is exactly what the Cruise are relying on. Pre-season's been pretty good, broadly, but that really means nothing at this stage. So they need to get up and running, all right. But my worry with them is that I know they got top six, which Cliftonville didn't. I saw the whites of their eyes. I saw how soft their underbelly was during that really bad period coming up around Christmas and post-Christmas. Of course, they turned it around, but I think they're more that side in the depths of winter than they were after that game where they got stuffed by the Swifts. I think that's realistically where they might be. But similar to the Reds, maybe there'll be a load of players coming in and they'll change it around. But I think people saying they're top six side anymore it's just not where they are, in my opinion.
They're a real mixed bag. What you're saying about not being able to name the starting 11, I've tried to have a wee go in my head there, and you're right. I haven't a clue. I couldn't tell you the striker. Uh, Half the players I want to name now play for Carrick, so I'd maybe be better at naming their 11. In the back of my mind, I was thinking when I was looking at my league table for this, I thought Crusaders have recruited well, and then I had a look at the list, and I don't know. I don't know if they have. I don't know why I was thinking that. I think Thorndyke's a good signing. I don't think he got a fair cut of it at the Glens, but outside of that, I
And
mean,
he's an exciting player, isn't he? When he gets on the ball,
yeah,
he can do things, and I think Crews need that bit of creativity, especially centrally. I don't think they should have been going in with BJ Burns and Laurie one more time. Like they needed to refresh, but Larmer could be a bigger loss than many people probably expect. They have lost bodies with that experience. And let's just say that. So we all know Thorndyke, at least he knows this league a wee bit. But is it McKechnie from Arbroath? Brennan Hamilton from Aberdeen? Elliot Dunlop? Adam Brooks looks good. Like, that's the one player where stats, bit eye test, he could be someone who is the Franklin or the offered. But I just don't know how they play, how it all comes together. So we could look stupid because these are 5 top 6 players or so that they've got there and they dominate. But I'm not sticking my neck on the line when they've lost so many regulars.
Yeah, like when you look at this transfer window, it kind of feels like the transfer window that should have happened last season, with Cadell coming in. It feels like it is just a full refresh, and it feels like it's more building for the future. I don't know how much I would look at those signings and think, yeah, Crusaders are really going to have a great year this year. They're, really trying to push on. For me, that looks like more of a, you know what, we'll see how this season goes. We'll take it match to match and sort of more focus on building like a play style, or trying to get a bit of identity that is maybe different from what they had with Baxter.
well, how long does Cadell? How bad does it have to get for Cadell to go?
I don't think that's a pre-January discussion because there isn't anybody that I'm looking at going they will come in. And two, this at least to me says this is a whole cultural move that they're doing. I don't suggest, I think Declan Goodell's on board with this. I think everyone's bought into this cultural idea. And I'm not saying it can't work out or that I particularly dislike it. I just can't predict in a huge amount of faith that the other teams that have built and have invested in the way they have aren't going to see better returns than what they have. The thing with the Crews that we saw particularly last year, which maybe doesn't get hugely talked about because if they're not at the top of the league, sometimes the Crews can be forgotten about ever so slightly, is that Seaview was such a solid rock for them, and we saw that allure, that glamour broken a wee bit. When Portadown, a team who had just come into the league, going down, was it like October, November, and duffing you 3-0. Dungannon battering you in January. That didn't happen a couple of years ago. So teams might feel a wee bit better about themselves going there. And we all know Crews, there's some pitches where you just don't see them doing particularly well, and they haven't done well. So they'd need to turn that around stat if they were to repeat it. Fifth was impressive. There's no questioning that. But it was a mixed bag at home. And defensively, can you name me their centre back pairing?
I don't think I could name you one of those centre backs at this point.
And on top of that, would you not look at teams who'd be considered bottom 6 teams, and that might not be a thing anymore with the new middle class emerging and going, that's probably better, that's probably better. So if you were to go for Linfield, or I know Glentoran took Larne off them, they're not banging down the door to take any more Crews defenders off them, and that was a weak point last year.
And now you wonder, what is this Crusaders team? Because as you say, it used to be built on solid at home, no messing about, get the ball up to Jordan Owens, and then you've got your tricky men around him.
Well, you can still do it if you want. He's still there.
I mean, yeah, but maybe is that your problem? Maybe that's your problem all of a sudden, because now what is this team? You can't have Thorndyke as your sort of golden piece in the middle. Like that is like 8th, ninth sort of behaviour. And
And that is why I put them as ninth.
oh, Peter, there's this year's Port's 12th. Wow, I went 7th.
Or, and I'm not saying that because I think that they're so a million miles away from a team's couple of places above them. I just think it could be close amongst a number of teams, and I just see them shaking down the tree. Does that then say, Ross, you completely disagree?
Well, I just don't think they're that much worse than Cliftonville. I was tossing and turning between which of them to put 6th and which of them to put 7th. I think they're two very even bags.
I think if you stick, I know that's what Carrick have been doing recently with Crusaders players, but if you stuck an amber shirt on them of their 11 and go, this is actually Carrick Rangers, you happen to be playing at Seaview, I don't think you're putting 7th. I think you're slightly drawn by the fact that you're used to Crusaders being up there. And there is something to that, because I think Cliftonville have that slight bullishness to them that I think crews need to have. They can't wither again. So I just think they are the team that, particularly with injuries, particularly if they can't get this gelling quickly, because even during last year, at least they had all those players knew who they were, and yes, there was injuries, but it's just a slow start, difficult winter. It could be a hard turnaround because there's so many sides gunning to get in that top 6. Before it was a fantasy. I don't think it is anymore.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Peter. I did have them down as low as ninth at one point when I was doing this prediction. I think, again, I don't know if it's just coming back to a sort of form and history sort of thing. I do think it's going to be a reset year for them.
Which isn't a bad thing
But
either.
no, it's not. And as I say, I definitely, as you said about the cultural change, I think it should have happened last season. And I'm thinking where I would have had them last season if it was a full reset. I have them down in 7th, same as Ross.
If this is the reset year, then what was the point of last year?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
What was it?
Well, I totally agree. I feel like I threw Crusaders under the bus a wee bit last year, kind of come January, because I thought, what are you achieving by not blooding the players? And of course, all those young fellas they've brought in could do great things, and that's what they're hoping for, and that's what the coach is there to do. I don't think Cadell's under a huge amount of pressure unless it goes really, really bad. But here's a combination for not a particularly successful season. You're not particularly strong at home. Your back line is all over the place, and you're not scoring goals. And who's to argue all three of them is not predictive with Crusaders?
Well, it could very easily happen, and I just don't have them as a cup side. I think, was it last season or season before, Ards put them out of the cup. Limavady ran them very close at home last year. Unlike Cliftonville, they are a team where you could see them being a scalp that's taken.
I look at their first 5 games, and actually this is another important point with the Crews. They have Carrick at home, then they go away to Larne, Bangor away, Glentoran at home, and then Portadown away. There's a wee bit of pressure in my eyes on that Carrick and that Bangor game. Because if they don't, from those first 3 games, have at least 4 points, you go to Glentoran at home. Maybe that's a reality check of where they are, albeit they were a bit of a thorn, no pun intended, in the side of Glentoran. And then Portadown away, that's a game they would need to win because they're going to be a rival this year. So it just sets them up where after 5 games, they're only sitting with 5 points. All of a sudden, when a big game comes up, doesn't go your way, it's not going to feel great. We'll see if those bold choices come together as we go for our next side. And it is Glenavon, a team that I thought was going straight down last year. And up until Paddy McLaughlin came in, that looked like a fairly realistic reality. It didn't come to fruition. They practiced 3 times a week. McLaughlin added a bit more steel, him and that combination with Coates. And they got a bit of a mojo going when they came in. That somewhat faltered then come, let's say, maybe February, March time. And we're looking at a side who struggled to score goals last year, beef up their team at the back. I believe that maybe this is a team that's headed for 3/5 at the back. And I don't know if that's really a move that's going to help them like push forward in the right direction. Probably a team that's hard to signify. A bit like Cliftonville, they're probably a fan base who wishes they were higher than they were and are maybe looking at their team. And there's nice pieces in their team with a wee bit of rose-tinted glasses. But this is a side with players who don't have a great injury record. We saw how Reece Marshall worked out last year. It didn't really. In comes Malin. Murphy I like, but isn't exactly a player known for a particularly sterling health record, even at his young age. So O'Connor and McDade, probably underrated and worked well together during patches. Who's going to score Glenavon up in the mid-table? Peter Campbell again?
Yeah, it's hard to sit here and actually think about where they're going to get their goals from. I think it's going to be a very, very patchy season from them of, the odd time they're sort of grabbing late wins and getting goals sort of out of nowhere. I don't think they're going to have a standout goal scorer. I think goals will kind of come in bits, but from all over the pitch, if you know what I mean, set pieces and the likes. When you say about going 3 or 5 at the back, I could see that. McLaughlin's done something similar at Cliftonville at one point. Now it was nice football with a very defensive setup, but it could be one of those things where maybe he's looking.
It would look a lot better if O'Sullivan and Tura was still there.
It would. It's
Because they're big losses.
Massively.
That's the killer. And then what are they doing loaning out Aaron Prendergast again? Like, what does he have to do to stick around for a few months?
Well, he didn't really pull up trees in the championship, did he? Like, it'd be different if he was sitting up there with 12, 15 goals, but there was a lot of other players in that division who scored more than him.
It's another body to score goals though, whereas they're just dealing with that limited pool. Chris Atherton gone as well. He was a creative spark. You're right in what you say. Where do the goals come? But I think they're just lucky in that. I don't think they're going to ship too many this year.
You'd hope so, because what they add to Barney McKeown, who was a massive favourite across the league, many people really highly rated him. Came in as their captain last year. They've added McClelland, who was up there with Coleraine, who I like. I would describe him as traitsy because he's big and tall, but can get a wee bit caught out on the ground. Harry Murphy, who was a bright spark for them, and you add to that Luke Cartwright, Paddy Burns could play in that three. So you've got bodies there. There were plenty of people going out there, but Chris Lowe has spent plenty of time on the sidelines rather than on the pitch over the past few years. Malin, who when he was with Cliftonville, what a player. But he's barely kicked a ball for Sligo Rovers over the past while, so McLaughlin's hoping he can unlock something out of him. So look, there's a scenario where you've got Malin killing it. You've got Peter Campbell, who found form, I thought, in the mid part of that season. And we're laughing, they're pinging in balls to 2 experienced heads in O'Connor and McDade. And McGovern looks to be the next of these players coming through. Malone's still there. Can Isaac Bird take another step up? They like Carlin there as well. There's something solid there, but I don't think it's challenging for the top 6.
No, I don't think they're quite going that high. But in terms of that sort of bottom half, I know you said it doesn't really exist anymore. They're probably, for me, going to be the most sturdy and the most, you can, going into games, you could probably guess how it's going to go. When you look at the likes of Ballymena and stuff that'll be around them, I think they'll be a wee bit more difficult to predict. Whereas I think McLaughlin's going to probably set them up in a way with those types of players that you'll probably have a reasonable idea of how their season's going to pan out after the first couple of weeks.
They're so different to the mid-Ulster rivals, Portadown, who are all a bit blood and thunder, which could and has been a key to their success against bigger sides. You can see if Portadown are in full flow, as they did last year, going to Glentoran and getting a big win. I just don't see Glenavon doing that. It would be a squeaky bum time kind of win, and maybe with all these players at the back, if they decide to play a 3 or 5 at the back, or all these defenders that they have at it, maybe that's exactly what they want to do. And they're young enough where they can build on this base to move forward. But they've lost a bit of spark in O'Sullivan and Ture, and I don't see it coming through. Maybe it just needs to be youth doing its thing. I have them as 10th.
I put them as eighth. I don't quite have them flirting with that last European playoff spot if it drops down, but I think Glenavon fans will just be happy enough where they're not looking down the barrel of 11th or 12th.
It could be a huff and puff kind of season where they draw against Bangor because they just can't get that goal, but they dominate, and in turn they get a draw against Crusaders at home where they feel as though they matched them but just couldn't convert their chances. But that's every team, isn't it? Sometimes.
That's exactly what Paddy will want. He'll be all over that. He'll take a draw to Bangor if he's getting a gritty point away to the Oval on some January Friday night. I think that's what this team's going to be all about this year.
Do you think if you're a Glenavon fan, you would say, as long as we're not flirting with relegation, that's not a bad thing?
Yeah. After the last couple of years where it's been real rocky, absolutely. I think they'll take just being well clear in 10th.
I also have them down in eighth, and it's exactly for that reason. It's just a case of for Paddy this year, just getting a bit of stability. As we're also saying there, absolutely take. I think they'll probably do the best against the teams in and around them down there. They won't be getting those real explosive wins against someone in the top six, but they'll get the odd maybe draw, but probably win, every time they face Bangor this season, for example.
Next up is a biggie. Linfield, champions again last year. It was pure efficiency at times. Some might say it lacked a bit of flair, but with Cooper at the wheel, they just totally dominated teams at Windsor Park time and time again. They looked so assured, calm in execution. They made a number of big signings in January who haven't totally lit up Europe for them, and there's a concern that without Cooper, this is a team who could get stuck in the mud in the same way that they did numerous times during that era of Larne going back to back. There's one clear aim for Linfield. It's win again, but there is some familiar foes and maybe a new one coming up at their tail. This could be a year where particularly Coleraine and Linfield is the big games, the big battles, and there's so many ex-Blues players in that Coleraine side, it could make it very, very spicy. They've added players in Morrison and offered, and by the end of the season, everybody finally decided that they actually really liked Fitzpatrick, and he got the goals and was a player of the season contender. Is it wrong to feel a wee bit off on them based on their European adventures so far? Because attack seems to be the one area where they never really sparkled in the 3 games which I've seen.
Yep, no, that's fair enough. Offord and Morrison have sort of flattered to deceive up to this point, and we've only made one signing that I can think of in Sean Brown off the top of my head. So it kind of is going again, apart from the obvious departure of the player of the season, which we don't look to be trying to replace. I think the message, the official line is that Morrison would be the replacement, but Moneyball style, you got to replace Joel Cooper in the aggregate with a few players. You can't. There's nobody hitting enough home runs. We're gonna have to start. Chris McKee getting on base, and that is the worst Moneyball metaphor to ever see. But
I actually think McKee needs to be rocking. He's the one player that seems like he's positionless in the sense that he's not a wide player. For some reason, he's not being played as one of the two. I think he can link things up. He does a lot of the striker things quite well. But the one thing I noticed from Europe so far is that Offord's almost being played, and I know it's against tougher opposition, so I get this, but Offord's almost being played as like a last 20 minutes, go be Lee bonus type thing. So maybe that will change, but I'm not a Blues fan, but I kind of want Offord and Fitzy to be the two boys and just make that happen.
I would love nothing more than that. Let's have someone up there with Fitzpatrick to get the flick ons and let him hold it up for something. And Chris McKee was playing in centre mid at one point. I don't think anybody wants that. And that is a testament to how little options we have in the centre of the park at the minute.
Yeah, that was the one thing that stood out to me. Is Shields going to play centre midfield again? Like, will there be a game where Shields and Mulgrew play together? And they just talk about the original Game Boy that didn't have colour in it or something?
I hope not because there's no legs in that. As much as I love both them players, and I think they definitely have their roles in this squad, they're getting no younger, and I don't know about that as those two in a centre midfield pair. And I don't think a lot of the Linfield demographics blood pressure could take that.
Joe, would you be excited about Josh Archer starting 32 games this season for Linfield?
Oh, not massively so.
I'd be happy enough with that.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I don't think Linfield fans are particularly excited about a player. What is he, 21, 22 maybe? Maybe he's older than that now, or maybe he's even younger, but he's a player who is like, he's almost like a very David Jeffrey-esque era player where he just runs up and down, but potentially just lacks that bit of panache on the ball. But maybe you don't need that. If Linfield go back to 2007 4-4-2, where it's flat back four, it's Archer being your box to box, it's someone else beside him. You have Miller high on one side, Morrison on the other, Fitzpatrick and Alford up top. Is Charlie Allen gonna play a role? Because he never got his footing at all, but he's still got that number 10 on the back of his shirt.
He's a strange one in that he, in the absence of Joel Cooper, should be exactly the remedy to that and sort of have him in the pockets and playing around. But he's another one. I'm like a broken record where he's done a shift at wing back. And when is that going to change? Because Kurt Miller, all-time assist leader for the whole league, and he's helping out at left back, and I can't stick it because
But come on, it's worked, has it not? Like,
no,
you add all
but
these
it's
things.
worked.
We've had. I know Larne have won the league 2 years out of the past three, but Linfield's points totals have been pretty great.
It's been fine, but like just
It's been more than fine. They could have won the league with
You
those
don't
points
remember,
totals.
Peter, you're speaking to a Linfield fan here. It's never going to be good enough.
it's been fine. It was fine last year in that we won the league, but the 2 years before that, it wasn't fine because Linfield need to be winning the league. And listen, I can give up. You can't win the league every single year, but why waste, in my opinion, one of the best players in the league? Basically, you're basically keeping him out of the way at left back. And see when he's at wing back and he gets the ball, and there's 11 boys from the other team in front of him, they're just thinking happy days. We have just nullified that totally. And the out ball was, oh, right, we'll give it to Kirk Miller, and then he'll hopefully get it to Joel Cooper.
Joel Cooper's like this weird X that's going to be talked about all year.
And I do that already about Axel X's. So it's, like, he wanted the lead. Well, it's not that he wanted the lead, but he wasn't given what he wanted, and he's gone now, so that's fine. But let's try to at least replace him. Let's get somebody in, or let's change the shape to remove the Joel Cooper sized hole. Let's put two people up front instead of hoofing the ball up the Fitzy in a channel.
You could change it up. I do think if the Blues are going to come unstuck, they're going to revert to form that made them unstuck. If we can remember the two Larne seasons, what happened there is that they happily blitzed what would have been the bottom six. And they pretty much did that last season. Talk about home form. Last year at Windsor Park, 16 wins and 4 losses. They were pretty good. It's just about doing that again, isn't it? Like if you took out the Glentoran results, they'd be even better. So it's this weird thing where Linfield have to go into robot mode from game one. Who's your biggest fear, Ross, right now?
Larne, I think.
Do you agree with that, Joe?
Uh, no, I don't know if I do. I can see where Ross was coming from, but I don't think I agree that it's Lauren this year.
It does feel like Linfield's biggest potential enemies are themselves, which is the nature of any team at the top of the league, right? But I think it's going to be, because I like their back line. Like, you've got a bit more stability there. Ewan East is going to be there back again, and regardless if he's left back or centre back, amazing. Like, I just think he's one of the best players in that position. So you add him and the other talent around him, that should be fine. But if we're starting to see 2-2 at Solitude, 1-1 at Shamrock Park, you lose up at Coleraine, that's where you're starting to see the hallmarks of, oh no. Even if it happens early, even if you're still top of the league, that's the type of results where you're going to get caught up again. Do you have them as champions this year, Ross?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Great.
But you can see, like, it's maybe the team where you most clearly can see how it goes wrong.
I agree. I really agree. It's not going to be a defensive blow up, I
No,
don't think.
because but, like you can see already in the European games, struggling a little bit going forward. And yes, it's a difficult tie against Shelburne, but like give it a go at least. You're at home and you're 1 goal behind. Give it a go. You showed them way too much respect, and now like I don't know, Fitzy needs to start well, or you can just see exactly where the season's going. And I think the goalkeeping issue clearly hasn't been resolved because it's now reverted to Chris Johns, and I think that could be a problem as well.
It's a weird one. But look, you got to play your best player. And David Healy's won so many leagues in the Irish League, so you got to give him that kudos. And I've seen some great coaching performances. Joe, have you got the Linfield blue and white ribbons around the Gibson Cup come the end of 2025-26?
I do, unfortunately. Look, it's a thing for me, and I feel like I'm repeating myself every season when we talk about it. They are just so robotic, as you say. It's just like as when we're also saying there about they didn't have a go against Shelburne. They can do that in the Irish League and they can get away with it. For me, I do think that the Irish League, when you look outside of the sort of top three, four teams, is becoming a bit tighter. But I don't feel like those teams really have a huge challenge on the likes of Linfield. It feels like when you talk about their 1-1 away to Portadown, I don't really see that happening this year. It might, it could happen, of course, but it's not something that if I were a Linfield fan, I'd be overly worried about because it's usually only a one-off result. They'll bounce back. They always seem to.
Because I don't think the top six are as strong, and maybe that top quota become a smaller number. I think that maybe benefits Linfield because they don't have as many of those potential banana skins. Because I do think they could blitz all of those other teams that we were discussing there. I love Alford, and I think once he gets up and running, we're on to something really really good there with them. And there's a scenario where I see, for example, Fitzpatrick being player of the season and Linfield not winning the league. But you see, if Alford's player of the year at the end of the season, Linfield have won the league,
Totally
100%.
agree. Totally
And
agree.
if he gets his chance, because I think he's very Lee Bonus-esque, and we saw that against Shelburne, just punting it down, chasing down balls, he could really tear into teams on the break, and that's maybe something that Linfield lacked. So yes, Linfield are not the most thrilling side that we've ever seen, but my goodness, have they got it done, and they can challenge for leagues. And I think many people see them as the favourites going into this season. Not for me, second.
Well, I think that getting it done is the problem because outs won the league at a canter last year where you could afford a draw and there wasn't much high stakes pressure. This year, if things aren't going right, and the crowd was down in numbers last year and it was down in attitude.
They won the league by 20 points, wasn't it, or something
Yes,
like that?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
They won the league before the split.
yes,
So
because
there's a big turnaround to happen for someone else to take that off them, which of course I'm predicting, but
Larne played about 1 million games in about 5 days. So they were just out of it. And then the Glens had done their usual March thing. So there was no competition. So that it was almost it wasn't a win by default, but you know what I mean? And I think that getting things over the line, I think you can only do that for so long. And if that continues, that's going to be a problem.
The thing when you talk about those other, the other team around them, obviously Peter's saying that someone in there is going to beat them to it this year, and we'll come to who I have in second. I just think it's too early for those teams at the moment. I don't think they have that give it over the line that we're talking about. Whereas I think Linfield do still have it. If things are down and the crowd is against them, they're almost used to that now, those players.
That's no way to win a league. Being used to your own crowd being on your back.
It's not, but it's going to happen again.
It is absolutely is because you can see that yes, it's like defensive football and it works because we keep clean sheets and then we get a goal, but like it's boring as get out.
I
And
100% agree. I in no way do I think yous are winning the league the right way. I just think yous will win the league again.
I agree, but it's boring as get out. And Healy's now there for 3 more years. I think the contract is, And like you can see the crowd just turning on him after, like, if the Glens beat us and then we lose another game around then, you can just see the crowd going like that. And all of a sudden that place is just the worst place to watch football again.
I think you're being very, very harsh. I think, yes, the Cooper thing's going to loom large because he was the player who could change things when it wasn't all free flowing. But you've got a young striker in Offord. McKee should progress. Fitzpatrick's coming off a great season. It should all work. I think they're not going to win it because I think they might get a wee bit stuck, and firepower is going to be the thing that sets them off course. And I'll let you know who that's going to be as we get along. I've picked another team out. I don't think this is a team who's really that bothered about going for the league. Bangor, how's it going, fellas? Great to see you. You finally got up here. What a turnaround. It's another one of these teams like Newry who were like playing in a park down the road and now they're back up. I think they are, as a quote-unquote club, as a project, they absolutely are a sleeping giant. What Bangor could be if they get the fan base there is excellent. And I think they've got themselves up. They've been everybody's second team in the top flight looking in the championship. But here we go. They're up. And I think before we even start assessing them, there's one question I have for you both. Looking at the team that they have now, and I think that could change because I think come the last 2 weeks of the window, there's going to be random lone players from the top teams in this league going in, and there'll be big factors for them. Might not happen, but I think that will. Is this Bangor 11 better than Loughall's last year?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
You think it's better?
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely not.
Definitely.
Absolutely, and that's my big concern.
Well, I'll put this one to you. If Bangor had played Loughall in a playoff last year, who would you have had?
I'm concerned that Bangor didn't particularly finish with a plum last year. We're all blinded a wee bit by the fact that they beat Glentoran in the Irish Cup. But I don't think they're great at the back. Good old Solus Grogan did wonders for them in 2025. He's not there. Dean's a Premiership goalkeeper, let's be real, but that midfield feels a bit weak, and we might be blinded by the fact that they do have strikers who scored bagloads last year and in previous years, and Ferguson and Arthurs. I just think everything else behind it isn't as dynamic, and unless they start strong, I think they're in deficits. There's no doubt that they'll be in a relegation fight all year. I'm not expecting them to do what Newry did. Well, it went a wee bit late, but Newry come up, not even a playoff. Loughall come up, almost got in the top six. Portadown come up, something very similar. I'm not expecting Bangor to continue that trend.
No, I'm with you there. I think it'll be a tough enough season. I do think they'll be better than what Loughall were last year. I think they'll be putting together not only better performances, but what we talked about at the start of the podcast, the likes of 5:30 kickoffs on a Saturday or a Sunday, the crowd that they could get down and the backing behind that squad, particularly at the start of the year, I think could help them. I could see them having a decent start to the year, and the longer it goes on is when they'll start to sort of get those tired legs, maybe pick up a couple of injuries, or maybe the crowd starts to die down. I think they'll be better. They'll be nicer to watch, but I think they'll struggle.
I don't know if I'm being swayed just by the fact I like the ground and I like going and I think they play nice football, but I think they'll be relatively comfortable going into March, April.
I can't see it. And in fact, you're talking about Clandy Boy. There's got to be some barnstormer games there, won't there? There's got to be some 4-3s and all the rest. And if you're a fan of the Seasiders, you're going to hope that's going your way. But that's my worry. It's 4-3. It's 3-1. It's it was 2-2 for a long time, but then eventually insert club here turned on the burners and got the final two. Away from home they'll struggle. Teams will not like going there, but as someone who's backed a lot of these teams coming up, no one was a bigger Loughall believer than I was. I have them straight going down at 12. I just worry. I worry about them at the back, and I think other teams are going to exploit that, particularly when Bangor are away. And unless things change it's just going to be a very difficult season for Bangor, in my opinion. But look, these sides coming up, I've proved a lot of other people wrong. Maybe it's time for me to be the one that gets this wrong about a team that goes up.
I think you're right, and it'll be a very, very difficult season. I only have them slightly above in 11th, so they'll certainly be fighting.
I've got them 10th. I think they'll be okay in the end.
You think there's two teams who across 38 games are going to be worse off than Bangor?
Comfortably. Yep.
Comfortably.
Yep. I do. I'm front it up. I do. I can see them taking almost doing like a Carrick of a couple of years ago and just wiping the floor with the teams around them. I think they'll be comfortable that way. I think Arthur's and Ferguson schools will keep them up.
I do think they are the type of team that could cause those mid-Ulster sides a whole lot of drama after, getting a big result elsewhere. I think and this is actually been another hallmark for teams that have stayed up, they need to start strong. I view their start as one of the more easier ones. I've created a wee aggregator, and I have their start, the first 5 games, as the third most lenient, let's just call it that. So, in my opinion, they got to get off, and they got to get off running quite quickly. They have Cliftonville at home. Good time to play them. If they lose, they'll go, well, we're back up, now we're going. But weirdly, that's a game where, you'd want to nick a point. Glentoran away, hey, throw it at, good time to go at them. Cruise at home, Ballymena away, Dungannon at home. Maybe I've over-egged just those home games, but you have to sneak something. Like, I could see them sitting there with 2 points, but realistically you'd want maybe 5 or 4. It's not a huge difference, but we've seen teams come into the, let's say, 10 games, 12 games point with 0 or 3.
That's exactly what I was saying there, and it needs to be a good start from them, and I think it will be. I am very worried about that first day of the season, which on paper I shouldn't be, given where I've placed them. But given how I think the support will be and how up for it this season they'll be, I think they're going to have a good start, which will keep them from the automatic drop.
Clandy boy, we saw it with Glentoran. It's a weird pitch. I know a lot of teams are used to playing on a wide range of quality of 3G surfaces, but teams didn't particularly like it. It feels a bit kind of tight and flat and all the rest of it, so nippy enough. So I could see the likes of Crusaders and Ballymena finding it difficult. So no one's going to get their points particularly easy, particularly at a night game down there, but I just worry they don't have the legs and they don't have the depth. And it's probably that there's other teams up there. So yes, a difficult season, and I would like to see them do well, but I just think there's more beefier, tougher teams. Okie dokie. I think this is the one that everybody's really interested in hearing about because they are the story going into this league. A team very much like Cliftonville last year, where the takeover was coming and they had this weird season where it was a bit of a halfway house. It's not a halfway house anymore. We know what this Coleraine project is, and it is ambitious. They went and got the players, they went and got the manager, they're spending wages, they've made maybe the most impactful transfer of the past half a decade, maybe a decade, like picking the best player by far from the best team and bringing him up to Coleraine. What a move. Can it work out because there's injury concerns around Cooper? Will he have that same thrust? I think he will. I think there'll be a part of Cooper looking to try and prove, and he's been a winner before, that he can do it. But it's not just Cooper, is it? Like, they've got so many other names, both well known and not, coming into that club. They're full time, and I think the talent alone should put them as strong favourites. But all these other players that have come in, like look at that back line. You've got Cody Lyons Foster in there to add to it. Connor Murray's come back. Will Patching. He could be a player who could really, really do things. We know the players they added in January. A bit of kind of settling in time has been had. I think Coleraine do need to hit the ground running. You worry for them is that it's always a bit, it doesn't flow as quickly as they'd want it. And I've always questioned Coleraine in the big games. Look what happened. I know the manager was only in like a week or something when that came in, but that was a poor result against Cliftonville in the European playoff.
Yeah, it was a shocking result, and you know, as a Coleraine fan, you'd be absolutely ripping, especially considering Cliftonville kind of gave it all away at the end when they went to Europe. But look, given the transfers they've done, I obviously have them very high up on the list. I do always slightly worry when it comes to plenty of transfers coming in. Even when you look at last season, I think they probably should have done better given the squad that they had. Obviously, this year now they've got the manager full pre-season behind these players. It will be different. But I still think they underperformed last year, given some of the players that they had, especially post January.
But they did get into the top 6. And from there, it's hard to really argue that Coleraine haven't cold rained over the past few seasons. Like, despite people thinking they were going to do well, me being one of them, it didn't totally come together for them. 6th again. So we haven't really talked too much about what's a good season, what's a bad season. But let's put the mark of expectations. It's Europe or hot water this year.
Yep, that's the benchmark. It has to be Europe, by hook or by crook, whether that's Irish Cup win or playoff or whatever. But it has to be Europe. All the money that's fallen in and the signings they've made, similar to the, put them in a different team's kit situation that we had earlier. If you look at just names, you're thinking, yeah, that's a team that should definitely be challenging for the league. But I think just because it's Coleraine, and because they've all just come together all at once, I can't really see it going the full way to completion.
I love the likes of Long, and they brought Dunn back as well. That's a strong back line of Kane, KFL, Dunn, and then Ives on the other. You go on a centre midfield, you have those players, and they're like not totally the anti-Linfield, but they have all this attacking might that could just totally blast out other teams. I think to be a wee bit of a hoarder, keeping Campbell around would just take them over the top, but they've already got great players in there who really should do wonders in this league. Rory Higgins, yes, he never really got over the line with Derry, but this is a guy who knows full-time football. He's been there and done that, and he is going to hopefully bring another level of professionalism. And let's just not forget the man who will probably get all the credit if they do well this season. Joel Cooper. He could beat teams by himself. People are predicting it here. I think this squad's so good that they're going to win the league.
Well, you have them in first, do you?
I do have them in first. I think this league's going to be a big battle between Linfield and Coleraine. And I think it'll be close. And I do think that the safe pick is Linfield. And they have all the experience to do it, but I just think where Linfield could get caught out in those games we talked about where they're not scoring goals, I think Coleraine will win more 3-2s in a good way, but actually are low-key quite good at the back. It's not an easy place to go up to the showgrounds. It's them travelling, which is the problem. I just think this is a big, meaty team who can score goals, and I wouldn't want to play them.
No, I 100% agree with you. Them and Linfield are definitely the two teams this season. I just think Linfield have a bit more in terms of experience. I just think it's maybe a season too early for Coleraine. Whether or not they get that chance again next year is another question. You could have the likes of Cliftonville obviously spending big next year, or chances that Linfield continue to strengthen their squad into the next season. So they'll want to be pushing everything. They'll be brave. They'll be bullish. But I just think it's slightly too early for them.
And that's what many people are going to say, isn't it? That's going to be the narrative around Coleraine. You can't just buy a team. They have to settle in. Larne, a lot of that team who was in that squad that won the league the first time had been there a majority of the season before. Bonus was in January beforehand. It took that time to come in. But like, we're even forgetting about players like Glacken, who can really star in that number 10 role. McManus, can he settle in? And he had such a great goal record elsewhere. Was Shevlin not the highest goal scorer last year? Yeah, I think people's stock on McGonagall's gone down ever so slightly, and I do feel like a wee bit of a hypocrite here when I'm saying I think Will Patching and Long's going to do good stuff, but I like them. I just like them, and I think they could they could really dominate sides. But I can also see a difficult fourth place because they can't get out of their own way.
For me, the need almost that stepping stone year that Lawrence sort of had, get into Europe and do well next summer, and then sort of tee yourself up for a proper full-on tilt at it next year. I just think this year is slightly too soon, so I've got them third. They're too much of an unknown quantity. That's it.
They
There's
are.
too many players have come in, and you're getting probably the best centre back in the league in Lance Foster. You're getting probably the best player in the league in Joel Cooper. But there's so many attackers there. Where are they all going to fit?
I just think they've got a nice mix of top quality Irish league experience with the players that should step up. So that's me. It's risky, but I think that they have all the traits to do well, and the reason why I think they will pip them, and it will be a pipping of them, is that I think they've got the goals where Linfield could stutter. A team who I think's massively underrated, but then it's said every year, because we'll move on here. Glentoran, like, they've lost some big names, but they've brought in a lot of players where I know everyone's somewhat poked fun at the whole Glentoran B versus Glentoran A, but if you were to set out a team of 11 players that could play for Glentoran, you could do the old Mourinho Chelsea thing where there is almost two players in every position. That should be good, shouldn't it?
That's what you want from your squad. And again,
And it's not guff either. It's a mix
no,
of
it's not.
experience, solid veterans, people who can do the dirty work, and a bit of youth coming up underneath.
There's a lot of that Glen side I look at, and I wish that Cliftonville had it.
They're boring in
And
a
I,
good way in some places.
yeah, yeah, without a doubt. But not to sound like a broken record, the Glens are the Glens, and as good as that squad is, I really struggle to put any proper faith in them.
I don't think the squad is that good. Like the drop from Coleraine to Glentoran is massive. I don't think it's a great
Oh,
squad.
yeah, without a doubt, like it's not touching those two squads, but in terms of when you look at the rest of that league, in terms of depth and in terms of options that they have, I think it's one of the better
Who
squads out
moved
there.
you in that team though?
You know what? Everyone's hoping he fails, but Patrick Hoopen is Patrick Hoopen, and is probably going to get more wins or more draws from absolute despairing games than most people who aren't fans of Glentoran would like to admit. He is going to fix a lot of problems if he can stay fit.
You know how old he is?
Doesn't matter. I he was
30,
still
34,
ripping up, like, he was still ripping up for Derry until those last few months, and his goal record is outstanding. He's a goal scorer. He's big, and I think he's got a point to prove after that whole situation with Derry. Of course, they've lost Sule. They lose the best goalkeeper in the league in Yolai, but we talk about Moneyball there. I tweeted this out. I think overall, I don't think that's not like that. You're not going to lose 5 to 10 points because of that. I think it matches up. Lance Foster loss, but they bring in other players. They bring in Larne, who's pretty much replacing that position. We'll probably talk about the Murphy move a fair bit over the next few weeks, but maybe I've been chatting to Matthew Brown too much, but I kind of get it. Like, you have Frankie Vid there, not a massive Frankie Vid fan. I feel like he can get caught out a wee bit too much, but he's probably more healthy than Murphy and similar age profile.
For me, I as I say, I feel like just a bit of a broken record when it comes to the Glens. There's players in there that on paper I think should have a good season, should really help the Glens. When you talk about Hoban there, they'll be hoping for him to hit the ground running. But we've seen
I think we're going to pronounce Hoban about 6 different. I'm still not confident on
I was there to see what way it was going, but
it. Yeah, we'll just forgive us, please. Come on, it's like Yolai. It took us like 3 months to realize how to pronounce that.
But I just think it's going to be one of those things where they may well start the season well. I can see them falling apart, and we're sitting here 6 months down the line going, we should have really predicted that this was going to happen. I don't. I have high hopes of them.
I have high hopes for them. In a kind of boring way, I actually think they'll still be within a title shout come December. I still think they'll be about there. They've strangely got a tough record to keep up against Linfield, because that helped them a lot last year. Those points that they got and those wins and the cup and all the rest of it. But if you kind of take that out, it does not particularly have Joyous reading. But there's a bit of goals there and a nice diversity of strikers between Jordan Jenkins and Fisher. And I know they don't particularly excite many fans outside of East Belfast. I don't know if Ferris is going to stick around there, but we'll have to see. It's an odd one being the fourth man there. But like, they still have Thompson, who did bits and pieces. You have Amos on one side, who's the guy that's been brought in on the other side that looks a bit good as well. Like, still have Marcus Kane, who can play centre back, and all the rest. They've got their new goalkeeper. I don't see them being the same kind of, like, I think some bottom six sides saw Glentoran come to town and they thought, we can get at them. Did Loughgall maybe get a result or two against them? I don't see it that way, in the same way. I think they'll get the goals when they're not particularly playing well, and defensively will probably be not as weak as we expect them to be for all their big losses.
Jinker's squad's better than it was last year.
I think on paper probably isn't the better squad, but I do think how it will work will be better, if that makes sense. I think they probably had bigger names last season, but in terms of how this team will perform, I think will be a bit more solid. Although, in saying that, I don't know if their position will be as high. I think they will be lower, but I think last year that kind of came down to some of the teams around them.
I kind of like their attacking outlet. I've got them as third.
I've got them fourth because for me it boils down to they had 3 players in the team of the year last year and they're all out the door and they haven't been replaced to the same level. So I think you're just going to naturally have a drop off there, and I think there's just 3 teams that are better than them, to be honest.
I think it's going to be a top 4 this year.
I have it more as a 3.
I also have it more as a 3.
I think the Glens are just sort of in that middling area. I don't think they'll pull up too many trees. Could see a cup run for them, but I just think they'll have a bit of a middling season. I don't think Declan Devine is the man to bring them forward, and I think that's the one thing a lot of Glen men would agree with me on. And I just can't see. It's almost as if he's taken them as far as he can already.
I see it more as a top 2 with a solo third, and then the Glen sitting down in fourth, and probably just about getting there. I think the likes of Cliftonville will be sort of, nipping at their heels a wee tiny bit.
The one thing I think we can all agree on, big season for Declan Devine. Like, he's had that time to settle in. He's got a couple of players in now. They've spent a bit of money without completely being reckless. We don't really know where Glentoran sit in the money bag territory, but there's some big names in there, time to produce, and we thought maybe a bit more of a boring side could get things going. I saw some dreadful games at the Oval last year. I think we might see some similar moments of that, but they can survive an injury or two, particularly up top, and I just think some players are going to knock it in and get the points just to help them float around up top there without having any sort of big top 6 scare.
I think the goal scoring is much more of a concern than you have presented. I think it's Jordan Jenkins and nobody else. I don't think Hubin's going to be up to much at all. And I might eat my words on that one, but I think he's probably past it. He was linked with Linfield, when I was in Abbey.
Oh no, we're getting to the reason.
No, yeah, that's it. I tell you what I do like. Jordan Stewart, I think that's a cracking signing.
He feels like the old man out to me, weirdly.
But that's a bit of a link. Someone to feed Jenkins, put Jenkins in behind. I think that is the way to go. But I just think if Jordan Jenkins gets injured, they are snookered.
Next up, a team here who actually has put a bit of investment up top. Like, we used to joke about Larne being the team that brought in all these like ex-Cliftonville players, and then Carrick have brought in a load of players from Glentoran. But now with Baxter, there's the whole heap of these boys coming in from Cruise. Is it going to work? We'll have to find out, because last year it was not a sterling season. They go from their best ever points total position under King to then that totally falling off at the top of the season. He moves on, in comes Baxter. He gets a tune out of them in fits and starts, but it was like trying to fix a leak with duct tape. You put it here and then something else popped up, and they didn't feel like a real coherent team. That can often happen when everything hasn't gone well together and you're trying to address problems. They have this summer now to try and build up something more coherent. The answer seems to be experience, and they've got that with the likes of BJ Burns. They've brought in Lecky up top, which is the one signing I don't think is being talked about enough. If he's healthy, he is someone who can be really dangerous in games against all sides. So you bring that in. Jimmy Callagher, is there another decent season up there? They'll hope. I mean, I don't think a team's ever tried to stay up with a back line without like an SEL between them, but good luck.
Yeah, look, I really don't like it. I don't like this transfer window at all for Carrick. It gives me no faith whatsoever.
You see, I feel like this was me 2 years ago, and then they had the best season ever. Yeah. So I feel where all of a sudden I'm like Grant Peter going, it's okay, 35-year-old players can do the best, because this is what we're talking about. 35 is Burns, I think.
Or maybe 34 was fine 2 minutes ago. 34.
I know, this is what I mean. What's happened to me? Like, I can understand where you're coming from.
I understand the experience, and I do think experience is needed when you're down there struggling. What I don't like is that he's buying ex-players, and that might sound a bit strange, but I just feel like it never really works when you're bringing them down to lower teams. I just think it's going to be a case of, I just have zero faith for them whatsoever. I think they're right down there in 12th for me.
I think this transfer window works for them for this year. I think it's such a stopgap move. We'll paper over the cracks and we'll stay up this year, because see if half those transfers retire at the end of the season, you're not shocked at all. So I think they bring in enough quality with those names. Gallagher, Billy Joe Burns, just sort of one last dance. Lecky up top with Purchase, I think, is mouth-watering. I think that there's goals up there. I think it's fine for this year.
It's a bit mouth-watering in the year 2019, but still, what Lecky's game was all about was being better with his feet and being able to push players off. So yes, he's coming off a big injury, but I can see him getting some brilliant goals, picking it up at the edge of the box and just pinging it in and finding that top corner. And there's, Larne fans crying into their scarves. That's what I think about Carrick, where at the back could be totally hopeless and is going to be the cause of a number of massive losses. They were not a pretty watch, but with Gibson and with Lecky, they've got something that maybe not a lot of other teams around them do. I do feel like I'm being the complete opposite of what I was talking about with Bangor. So I think we're kind of seeing these sides slightly differently, but also the same. So look, I'm not banging the drum saying here we go. Here comes, Carrick coming to reclaim their 7th place position, but I do have them in 11th, and I think their experience will hold off those Bangor games, and I just think they'll get more surprise results than we expect. But overall, I think it will be a difficult team to watch, and results will be hard to come by. Maybe I've totally got my stats wrong here, but I have 1 win all season away from home for Carrick. That's horrendous. In the league, that is.
Yeah, that is absolutely shocking. The fact that you can stay up with that type of form is quite impressive.
Like is there any games against teams where you're like, that could be a good game there? Like, I don't particularly see them going into many away games with a hope.
But that's my thing. We talked about them earlier. The likes of Bangor, I could see them beating Carrick every time that they play them this season. Like, you need to be beating the teams around you as well when you're down there in that sort of relegation battle. And for me, I just don't see them getting past them, even with that experience that we've talked about.
I'm surprised for getting Heatley as well. So there's plenty of great players on their day, but in 2025, going into 2026, how much can they keep things going? And oftentimes what happens is that injuries pile up. the odd suspension here or there. And how does it work as a team? We don't know. But it's clear in some games they're going to shut down the other side, and they've got enough goals up top to maybe sneak more results than we all might expect. Okay, trying to gather a bit of pace here. A team, I think expectations should be sky high for this side. I'm talking about Ballymena. Like, Jim Irvin gets a 3-year contract before the end of the season. They have this huge run before Christmas where they were top at one point, weren't they? It was a crazy amount of games they had won on the bounce, and then that all fell away. Hopeless up top. Totally hopeless. And at the back, you wouldn't really bank on them either. But they've made some signings, not as many as maybe some people would expect, but they've added to this side that had little sparks of quality throughout it. Love O'Connor. Questions about health and stability. You add in Toure and Clark either side of that back line. They should be a beefier side, should they not? But they will potentially. Where's the flow? How many games is Kennedy going to play for? I'm really up and down on Ballymena at the minute.
Yeah, I think that's what their season will be and what their form will be. I think they're a side that you just won't know what team you're going to get each week. I think you'll have players who might go on a 3-week, 4-week run of brilliant form, and you'll be talking about them, who's going to be in for them in summer, and then they'll go missing for the next 8 weeks. We talked about Glenavon earlier. I just think Glenavon will be a lot more stable. You'll know what you're getting from them. Ballymena are going to be the sort of rash and sort of going gung ho every so often, and you won't really know what you're going to get out.
Ballymena are the team for me where I've been looking at it all day, just moving them up and down the table, not really knowing where they're going to end up. Their ceiling's so high and their floor's so low. I like their business incomings. I don't think they've lost anyone where you're too upset. Johnny McMurray, bit of a miss up top, but he didn't really play that much last year. I don't think you're too gutted about any of them players leaving. I think if Jim can find even half the form that they found at the start of the year over a more consistent basis, I think it could be a bit of a team to watch. Equally, if they get in there run like they did at one point where Jim Irvin's future was in a bit of doubt, then you can see how it goes horribly, horribly wrong.
Players I really like, and we've all seen them: Carson, Jarvis, their bodies. You add in McElhenney in January, and when he was cooking, he really was cooking. So it's just, you have those three, and like, what formation are we playing here? I don't know. But if you let's say link in those three, and then you have whoever your striker's going to be with Ben Kennedy and O'Connor either side of them, that's better than a middling bottom six side, isn't it? And might be able to get more wins on their belts than the likes of Crusaders and maybe Cliftonville. At the back, there could be positives, and there could be some players that maybe don't particularly ignite. They've got some nice young players, like, I like Hood. Lafferty's still there as an older head at the back line. Like, McNichol could be the player who everyone will go, why on earth do we not get him? Because he'll come in, he's a big presence, probably what they've wanted for a while. Can Corbally stake his claim, a player that no one really's screaming about, and I'm not sitting here doing anything similar either? If Ballymena aren't top six, it's because their striking options didn't do well, because they've got enough in midfield that many other teams would like.
That's almost the only thing you're missing from the transfer deal so far is an out-and-out striker, your showpiece. Are they still sort of riding on Ben Kennedy's back and hoping he can do a bit more in terms of contributing goals? But from what we saw last year, no. McNichol, I quite liked all that I watched of him the few times last season. And I think if he can get up and running and if he can get stuff fed into him, if Darragh O'Connor can sort of light it up, I think David Toure is what a signing that is for Ballymena to land him. I think they'll be more than okay for relegation, but I think they'll sort of be dreaming of up towards seventh.
I think if they don't finish top six, there's significant heat and pressure.
I think that's too far. I think
I
that's slightly
yeah.
too far. Um,
With hold on, with Ben Kennedy, with Darrell O'Connor, who there was a bidding war for, you have all those players in midfield. You are able to get Matthew Clark, Toure in. Look, I think strong. I don't think there'd be many other teams above them who would have been absolutely hankering for him, right? But is this not solid? Like, I don't see them being. I do worry against the Linfields and the likes. They could get torn apart and look a bit poor from a shape point of view. But I just think there's something strong about this side in its core that should see them through. This is the one I don't like particularly, but I've got them as sixth.
I have them down in ninth.
Wow.
I'm coming from a very different viewpoint from you, where I do think they'll have good games, but I just more worry about their form throughout the season.
I've went ninth myself as well, just for similar reasons.
Mm.
I don't think I can see
I'm
them.
surprised by that.
I can't see them stringing together like 4 or 5 wins on the spin. I don't think they have that in them, just because I think they're a bit blunt at the top.
Probably a good enough squad for a bit of a cup run or something. They might have some sort of success this season, but and don't get me wrong, I think if things start to click, as Ross said earlier, their ceiling is so high, I could see them getting into the top six, but I just don't think that's realistic given how the season will play out.
If Paul O'Neill or Nathaniel Ferris, for example, and I'm really picking those names out of nowhere, if they were your number nine, does that change your opinion much?
Big time. I think that's their problem, that they don't really have that star striker. Like a Paul O'Neill would, I think, he'd run riot in that team.
I'd have to agree with you. Doesn't have the same leadership up top either. I like players that are amongst there. It's the one I feel least confident about, but I just think they've got such a strong spine that they could maybe just cut through all those other sides, a bit like Crusaders last year, and find their rhythm. And I think realistically, that's, I know the board backed the management team there, but I think that's investments there, and with investment comes expectation. Okay, who's next? Let's see. It is okay. Larne, the other side of the Slemish skirmish. I think you guys are very much the high men on this side compared to me. Nobody backed Larne more than me over the past while. And like it's weird because once they got into Europe, there was questions of, well, is this going to be the start of a dynasty that we're never going to stop? But last year was such a damp squib, even though they got results. But it was just, they were really not a great watch. They were exhausting to watch at times. And I wonder now, with Rooney properly at the helm and talk of there being not as much resources as previously, this is a new era without our friend Kenny Bruce. I would worry about them being the same kind of presence within the league. But here's what I like, and I think there's a trend coming here, right? They've got 85 strikers, and sometimes they play them all at the same time. Love it.
Yeah, it's certainly a brave way of playing, isn't it? I just think last season, obviously the amount of games they played massively had an impact, and they just went so under the radar that when it got to the end of last season, you're like, oh, Larne are actually still a pretty decent side. I think that'll be the case again this year. As I say, as I hinted at earlier, I have them in third, but a bit of a solo third. I don't think they're good enough to challenge Coleraine and Linfield. I think the changes with Rooney and stuff probably taking the helm this time will have a bit of an impact. But I still think they're a pretty decent side. I don't think it'll be good football. I think they'll be just as boring as last year, but they just know how to get results. I think
I think it'll be scatterball. I don't know. It's that lack of centre midfield is my concern. I know what they have as centre midfield, but it just seems to have been whittled away player by player. And maybe there's talk of them playing a 4-2-4, 4-4-2. I'm all for that. I think it could be manic with like O'Neill and O'Connor and Benji McGee and Lusty and Ryan when he comes back. Like, just let's go.
See all those names you just mentioned. How many times did they score against Auda of Latvia at home, in inverted commas? And how many times did they score against Pristina of Kosovo at home?
Yeah, and that's why I don't have them near the title. That's why I have them as fourth.
Jeepers, Peter.
Wow.
I
Oh, come on. Sorry, Glen. I've already done Glens, Linfield, and Coleraine, so of course the fourth.
Second for me, just because I think less European distractions. I can't see them going all the way into the league fees again. I just think they'll be more like themselves. There's a lot more stability. I think if you're going to see potential instability, it's going to come at the tail end of this season as sort of moves get made with the new ownership in terms of transfers in and out. But it seems to be a fairly steady enough ship now that they've sort of decided this is the direction we're going in with the management team. And you can see from there, Sean want to be a big miss, but
Yeah, but they still have like Bolger's out for pretty much the season, isn't he?
yep.
So that's tough as well. But you still have Donnelly, who I think walks into every team as well at centre back there. And yeah, I say about midfield, like you've still got Cricky Gallagher and Jordan McAneff and Joshua Key, chance for him to step up and do his thing.
Leroy Miller, like a new signing, as they say.
Like a new signing, but you know, that's a tough one, isn't it?
It's a long time to be out.
What long time to be out. You would expect one of those players, and O'Connor, Lusty, and McGee. Surely all of them can't be sitting on the bench. And also you're forgetting McKendry's like this, man, he's a striker come winger as well. So I'll tell you what, that'll likely be a big move come the end of the August transfer window. So yeah, look, I like a lot about the team. I just think we saw them come stuck. And also, they have their own usual names we've never heard of coming in. We used to go, well, if Larne signed them, then they must be brilliant. January kind of proved that they've ran out of that kudos, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. It'll just be very interesting to see what way those players come in will go. And McKendry obviously suffering that long ban at the start, along with a couple of other players. So Larne's start to the season could be a bit of a tricky one that they're going to have to make up.
We have two final ones. Let's see. We'll do it in order of... Okay, so I've Portadown first, and then we'll get on to the Swifts to wrap this bad boy up. I must admit, with Portadown, and you guys know this, that was the team, particularly the way they played for a majority of 2025, that I thought this was a team who had finally been found out. I still somewhat agree on that, is that they had that brilliant run and then teams knew how to take them out, and they did just that. But they did do well post-split, and bar, like, they came close to Cliftonville, didn't they, really? But they didn't get seventh, and I think that was a disappointment. But now Curry doesn't change up too much. You had a few signings here or there. I kind of alluded to it earlier. This team going forward have a spark. It's scattergun. I imagine following them would be very, very frustrating. Is there a chance they could add one or two more? Maybe, probably, knowing what that side could be like. They could probably do with an out-and-out striker, but then who wouldn't? So I'm sure the conversation from there would be very similar to a lot of teams. Let's try and get survival and then go from there. But I think they should be aiming to do more than that, surely.
I think as a team and a fan base, they probably will be aiming for a bit more than that. I think they massively overexceeded last year, to be honest. I think they went on obviously a brilliant run. And I think that is maybe going to cause a few strange predictions from some Portadown fans. They might be thinking they're going to finish a bit higher than they will. I have them currently in 10th safe, but it would not surprise me whatsoever if they do fall into a bit of trouble. And look, I said this last year, obviously, and I had a red face when we came to reviewing these predictions, but I just think last season was a wee bit of a bit of an anomaly, to be honest.
What's the weakness then for them that you would see them potentially lower than, let's say, a Glenavon or a Cruise?
I think it is that sort of when you talk about them almost being a bit of a gung ho team, they don't have a set.
No
Well,
strategy.
they have a set strategy in the terms
Like,
of
how many goals did they score late?
exactly, yeah, and
It's
they
hard to
were
go, that's what we plan to do. We plan to not really string a lot of passes together for the first 85 minutes and then score in the 92nd minute.
Yeah, and the goal on that run last season where you just kind of felt like, oh, they'll score one late because the have been was such a rarity. That does not happen, especially with a team down there. You could see it more happening with like a Larne or something in a bit of poor form where they'll pull through and get results, or Linfield. But for Ports, I think last year it was a wee bit of luck. They might not like me saying that, but I think the signings
I think they may get over you saying that. Like,
probably
you
will.
trying to,
I'm sure they
like
will.
late goals, maybe fitness and whatever, but you take out half of them of those goals, and it was more than just 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But then, like, I would say this backline. I called McKinnon before most people. Him and Alton Top's fairly strong if they can both, and they were pretty healthy until McKinnon's injury at the end of the season. You've got decent wing backs there, centre midfield. They've got this nice player Minzamba. It's just 2 players beside him, I'd say, and then, like, I know because I've talked to some Portadown fans, UKEC seems to frustrate them. I like him. I can see why teams try to get him because he's got a bit of stature and scored those and can score goal.
If he played for someone else, Portadown fans would be saying that's exactly the type of player we need to provide a bit of spark. I think when you look at the recruitment, I think it's been all right. There's a couple of names obviously nobody's really heard of, but that's paid off before from the League of Ireland with UKEC and Obacan. Jamie Ray, I think, is a smashing signing, but I still think that's a really poor squad. I think they punched above their weight massively last year.
I just think other teams above them, like that I have down here, like Ballymena and Glenavon, are a bit more purposeful with their signings and seem to be building a bit more. Whereas that Portadown team almost looked like what we did last season worked. We're going to try it again, and I just don't think it will. I think that kind of sums up how I feel about them.
Again, there's a trend here, and that trend is I think teams that can score goals will get out of trouble compared to the ones that have this team that is built for being solid, but then get stuck when they cross the white line. And Portdown's that weird team where I'm like, I quite like the boys at the back. Okay, McCarry's pretty strong there. And then you have UKEC. Ubacan's this weird player where, like, some of his goals are, like, as a finisher, might be one of the best. It's weird to say this, but one of the weirdly best finishers. He just gets there and gets goals out of nowhere. Like, who's on the other side? Like, Keelan, Leaper, friend of the podcast, like, he's so excited about this guy Tulloch that they've signed. Like, he could be one of these strange players that just does the business and is turned up on one side. And a team like Portadown, teams around that part of the league, need these players to come off. But you would probably go, surely all these signings from down south, from the League of Ireland and down below, they can't all, like, the track records, Larne levels 2023 levels of good. So I don't have them going higher than this. I don't love sometimes how they set themselves out. They absolutely can take out a big team and then falter against the worst team in the league. So I have them as 8th. I'm strangely the high man. But I mean, you know this yourself. There was a time I was coming into this a couple of weeks ago going Port's 12th. I was going to go full Ross. And as many people said, never go full Ross.
Well, people started calling me Chloe Kelly
Why?
because the first time was so nice, I just had to do it twice. Portadown 12th place.
Wow, this is this your gimmick
No,
now?
this is honestly, that is the worst team in the league. They were stinking this calendar year. I just think the squad's poor. I think the manager's poor. 12th.
I don't like it, but I can see it. It's similar to Glenavon. Let's just say I think they're better at the back.
Let me tell you, Peter, a lot of people didn't like it last year. A lot of people
That's
didn't
fair.
like it.
I get it. Like I said, you where I was a couple of weeks ago. Maybe they'll get these signings through that they need. Again, as I said to you, Benji McGee, if one of those Larne strikers fell in the lap of the Portadown management team, they'd be like, excellent. Because I don't know what happens if Ubacan goes out for them. Who is there? Fife, maybe? UKEC?
Well, what's shifted your needle in the last few weeks?
I just think comparing them to other teams, I think other sides don't have the likes of UKEC, maybe even like Ben Wiley, maybe. But I tell you what, if there's suspensions and injuries, gone. They're in trouble. They're in trouble. I think there's weird pressure for that team to get up and rolling quickly because they've felt so much pressure in previous times. But yeah, I have them as eighth, and we wrap up with the Golden Boys. Who called this last year? I did, not to the extent, but I said to you this team was frisky in Dungannon Swifts. They went on and did that. They are the best coached team in the division, which is usually some sort of like sly, like runners up trophy, like patting on the head, going, "Oh, you're very well coached." This team is well crafted, well put together. They have youth, they have experience, they play wonderful football. They lose players like McGovern, who I think should be in the Northern Ireland squad if he keeps on going the way he's going. And they don't even need to go crazy. They just go up. Galvin was always there. Now, we're recording this before all those European games, so we could all look stupid. But of course, the Swifts went away from home and didn't just play it simple, won. They've got depth in almost every position. They could fall away, but I think the reputation they have now and their ability to find talent and utilize it and really make it difficult for teams, and how tough it is going down the Stagmore Park, they will be somewhat crisisless, which means they'll go right up through the middle.
Yeah, look, I see where you're coming from, and I think there'll probably be a lot of people's like second favorite team. Certainly from that sort of probably coach the best, and they sort of play football the way some people would say is the right way.
How is Glennie, by the way, still at the
Yeah,
Swifts?
Totally thrown under the radar.
massively so. The one thing I slightly worry for them is the amount of losses that they had last season. They had as many as I think it was 15 by the end of the season, and with teams around them, I just wonder if they can keep up that same sort of form. Okay, you can be coached the right way, but can you always get those games over the line? I'm not saying that last season was a one-hit wonder. I don't think they'll do as well as last season. They're certainly an improved side, but I think you could maybe see them settling down a bit lower in the table this time.
Margins were thin, Ross. They scored 44 goals and conceded 40. They got a lot of juice out of the squeeze when they needed to.
Yeah, they did, and I think they'll sort of have a bit of a regression towards their norm. More what you'd expect, just because there's that top four that we talked about, and I don't think anybody's going to break into that. But you look at them and you think that is comfortably a better side than Crusaders, probably in front of Cliftonville. And you just think if they play to their potential, the fifth is surely theirs as a minimum.
This is where I'm sitting. I look at it and go, in this, what I'm describing, the new middle class in the league, which features the Swifts, Ballymena, some might argue Glentoran, Cliftonville, Portadown, and Crusaders. The Swifts are like the SWATs in there, who have a nice balance of quality, of youth and experience, can mix it up when they want to, and they just get the best out of players. Like Tiernan Kelly starting a European game. I wouldn't have predicted that, but my goodness, does Roddy make it work?
He certainly does, and that is certainly a trait of Rodney. Like I don't get me wrong, it's a brilliant crop of players. I don't know if another manager in the Irish League right now could have got the same sort of results out of that squad. And that's not a go at the squad. That is very much plaudits to Rodney.
I think he's got a big shirt number this year, and I know he's shone during late periods when he finally got his run in the team. Maybe it was an injury or so, but look, buy stock in Tomas Galvin because he's the man. He's going to be given the opportunity to be the man, but there isn't crazy pressure on him because you still have Mitchell, you still have McBrien coming into that team. Maybe that's a player who doesn't truly find his heights once again, but there's enough in there that I think that, yeah, I agree. Is Bigorama and Alves going to have as much freedom and will be, let's say, less? They were maybe forgotten about a bit. They probably weren't as targeted in the same way. Coaches know all about those boys now. So home record will be key. Yeah, fifth for me. I think they'll be the best of the middle class.
I have them in sixth, but I don't see them going any lower than that, and I could see them stretching up higher. I obviously have Cliftonville in fifth, but I think that'll be a pretty tight one between the two.
I think a handy enough fifth. I think as we say, they're the best of that middle grouping. And imagine they do go on a wee bit of a European run. Imagine how good that'd be.
But imagine how that could affect their league.
Yeah, well, this is it.
Well, in my opinion, it's top. Like we talked a wee bit about good seasons, bad seasons. Like seventh is not a bad season for the Swifts. Um, I'm sure they'll want to keep this up, but just the way all these teams are in flux, I think they should be comfortably in the top six. But again, there's a lot of things that could change for them.
If another one of their big names goes, if Alves or Bigirimana sort of struggle for injury or form, you can see how it does fall down a little bit. But I think they've got enough pieces everywhere. They're more than the sum of their parts. Where
And maybe that's the best you can hope for. I think Galvin will need to be 80% of what McGovern was, and I also think, let's be real, we still do not rate highly enough how good McGovern was last year, and how actually a lot of his goals kind of came out of nowhere, breakthroughs, winning the ball, even from the likes of a set piece. So, I just like that midfield. Bobby Jack McAleese could be a player, but they just have smart, savvy players like Dylan and all the rest. And yeah, Curry might be difficult. Like it could all fall apart at the back because that's where there is an absolute wonder players. But Marn gets himself properly established there. I think McGinty's an underrated player at the back. We all know about Glennie and Scott either side. Liquid Football 2.0, boys. And that's our table. You can shout about it, you can cry about it, you can tweet or X, whatever you may like at us. But just to remind you, to get you stirring or to get you crazy positive about where your team is going, I'll let you go through your team first, Joseph.
In 12th, I've got Carrick. In 11th, I've got Bangor. 10th, Ports. 9th, Ballymena. 8th, Glenavon. 7th, Crusaders. 6th, Dungannon. 5th, Cliftonville. 4th, Glens. 3rd, Larne. 2nd, Coleraine. And 1st, Linfield.
Ross?
in 12th, I've got Portadown, followed by Carrick in 11th. 10th, I've got Bangor. Ballymena in 9th. 8th is Glenavon. 7th is Crusaders. 6th, Cliftonville. 5th, Dungannon Swifts. 4, Glentoran. 3, Coleraine. 2nd is Larne. And Linfield back-to-back champion.
Bangor in 12th for me, Carrick in 11th, Glenavon in 10th, followed by Cruise 9th, Ports 8th, and Cliftonville missing out on the top 6th and 7th. Ballymena doing wonders there at 6th. We're all loving Swifts in and around 5th there. I think we're talking about, together we all agree there's going to be a new established top 3, maybe top 4. I have Larne and the low man there on 4th, Glens and the high man there in 3rd. I've got Linfield missing out in the league, and I'm sticking my neck on the line that I just think the quality in that Coleraine side is going to be insurmountable, and it'll be difficult, but I think they are going to shock the league and will be champions come April, May time. Fellas, I almost forgot that what we do at the end of this podcast is that we talk about the games that are coming up. Remember how we do this? We start as what I usually would do with a game on Friday. We'll not know what to do with ourselves now that is back. Coleraine Larne, barnstormer, tone setter to start the season up at the Coleraine Showgrounds. It'll have that nice little summer haze up there, and it's all poised to be a drab 0-0.
You took the words out of my mouth there. I could 100% see this being a draw. Both teams will really want to win to kick off their season. I think both teams massively need it. But I could see it being like a 1-1 or a 2-2.
Am I right in saying there's a threat this doesn't happen if Lauren go through in Europe, which would be a bit of a dampener?
Potentially. I mean, it'd be good for Larne, I imagine. Everybody else, if that wasn't going to go ahead. But we'll plough along with the idea that we will harbinger misery at Inver Park.
It'd be good for the chasing pack to just be psychologically ahead of Coleraine straight off the bat. But if it does go ahead, I see a 2-0 Coleraine win.
3-1 Coleraine for me. Saying that though, what a statement if Larne win that. I think that's on Larne to go, all right, newcomers, we know how to do this. So I think I'll be a very interesting managerial battle there. But yeah, there's a part of me thinks 1-1 tepid. No one really, like the first 45 minutes, everyone's not quite sure what they're at. But Larne should maybe have the advantage because they've played more competitive games in recent times compared to Coleraine. Moving on to Saturday, 3 games at 3 o'clock. Cruise against Carrick Rangers. It's the Baxter Derby, but it's even more spicy, if you can call it spicy, by all the ex-boys in red and black. There'll be about 8 of them going into the wrong dressing room at this rate.
Yeah, this is a fairly straightforward Crusaders win for me, I think. I don't think there's too much in it, to be honest. I could see Crusaders coming away 2-0.
I could see this being a draw, just sort of a cancel out job. I could see a 1-all, just to give green shoots for Carrick, but I could see them being stamped out pretty quickly. But I can just picture this being a draw.
Ditto, I think Carrick will score. And then I just ask myself, will Crusaders score 2? I just think with so many different players, I don't think so. And surely there's enough ex-Crusaders players in that team who, if the goal comes up for Carrick, they'll be able to shut it down. 1-1, but I have a weird, sneaky inkling that we could all get a bit over the top excited if Carrick sneak that. But yeah, 1-1 for me. A game which I've been to numerous times covering, and it used to be just crazy town every time they met. I think they met a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago at the start of the season, and it was like, that was a Prendergast game where like, was it like Glenavon down to 9 men and they still got a late draw. I don't see it being as thrilling as that. Ooh, I'm going to say 2-1 Ballymena here, but it's another like 1-1 kind of game.
I think I'll go the reverse of that. I think 2-1 Glenavon, but you could see any of the 3 results happening here because they are just so close together at this stage for me. But I think I've Glenavon just edging this one.
I think the same. I think Glenavon will come out on top of that one.
Both teams will be coming into this game off the back of European adventures. Dungannon uniquely actually know how to take on Linfield at Windsor Park. They've obviously had success there recently by winning the cup and also then sneaking that Charity Shield for as much as you want to read into that. Surely Linfield should be a bit more savvy for this, but this is not the type of game Linfield want to play early. I don't want to be a broken record, but I can see this being a 1-1 0-0. But ideally for all Blues fans, this is just a simple 2-0. But Dungannon could keep fighting to the very, very end.
I'd love a 2-0, and I can see it happening. But one of those ones where the second's pretty late on, it's pretty cagey up to that point. You're right in what you're saying that it's it's one of the worst games you could probably start with. Um, but I just back us to get over the line simply because we're at home.
I think Linfield's performance will probably reflect the fact that you don't want to play that game. I think it'll be very, very defensive, or well, not so much defensive as much as it's boring. They'll be very Linfield, and I think they'll come away with a 1-0 win.
Portadown Glentoran, a fixture that was more famously feisty during the 2000s, down at Shamrock Park. Like, there should be a massive crowd here for both teams. Look, I've been pro Glentoran all podcasts. I think they'll get an early goal and Ports could struggle. I think this is 3-0 Glens.
I think this is, other than the next game we'll get to, I think this is probably the one of the better games this weekend. And I think you'll have quite a high scoring game. I think it's probably going to be 3-2 Glentoran.
That's what we want, don't we?
Yeah, 100%.
I have a 3-1 Glens. I think Ports will score at some point, but Glens are just a far better team than them. I can just see them winning.
We Patrick Hubin hat-trick, yeah.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And then finally we wrap up with a game on Sunday. Top 5 football returns to Clandy Park. Cliftonville are the team up against them. And I think Cliftonville, as I'm sure you'll be happy with this, Joe, I think they're going to pop the party balloons, but I don't think it will be particularly sparky. I think this is a 1-0 win.
I think I'm the opposite of you, Peter, and I think it probably will be a bit sparky. I think it'll be good atmosphere. Both teams really up for it, especially Bangor. I do think we'll come away with the win, but I think Bangor will definitely get a goal. I'd say 2-1. Cliftonville.
I'm going 2-0 Reds. I think they'll just be too much on the day.
I have to agree. Well, boys, there you go. Thank you very much for tuning in all the way to the end. If you did, this is a big one. I would like to say it usually isn't this long. It usually isn't this jam-packed, but can sometimes be this lengthy. But look, I know you guys out there. You're dedicated Irish League sickos, I might call you. And we're here back for a fourth season. Exciting. By the time you're listening to this, we will be hopefully reeling in the post-glow of a second live show in 2025. Who would have thought that? Before we go, boys, me asking you to do that video that promoted the live show, like, maybe you don't have a list, but is that the weirdest thing I've ever asked you to do?
I'm racking my brain for weirder stuff, to be fair. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something weirder out there, but give me thinking time on that one. Next time I'll let you know.
Maybe something we can't say on this podcast, who knows?
Well, I'm sure there was plenty of things that could not be said in this podcast that went down at Pug Uglies on Friday night there. Thank you very much. If you did nip down, very much love the support. Total madness firing that together in a couple of weeks, but I got enough messages where I thought, I'll go and do it. So we'll see. Maybe we'll stop by your club over the next few months if you are someone that, I don't know, like, is in charge at one of those clubs. Sorry we didn't say that your club's the best club in the world, but have us down and we could entertain a couple of people for an evening or an afternoon. You never know. We are free. Maybe for a birthday party. We'll figure it out. But boys, we should do this a few more times this season, I reckon.
Hope so, Peter.
Go on, man. Why not?
We're back with a bang. Where can people find Around the Grounds NI?
We're Around the Grounds NI on Instagram and TikTok, and we are AT Grounds NI on Twitter. And then I'm just not even going to give out my personal this time just because of that port shout at the end.
You can find both of our personals on Twitter, though, so if you do want to give them a view, certainly do.
You won't be the first.
We're back, and we're ready to rock. Boys, until next time, see you soon.
All the best, Peter.
See you, Peter.
You knew it was going to be big. It always is, and it's great to have you here. If you're a newbie or you've been following me since day one, we're back for another year. We're back for another season. If you were there at the live show on Friday, the room was packed. It was great to see so many people that really I've only chatted to us either on Twitter or like on Twitter Spaces back in the day. Oh, it was such good crack in the room, just talking nonsense about Irish League football, and has really set me and all the rest of the gang up for what I hope is the biggest and best year of not only just this podcast, but Irish League football. We want it to be great. We want it to be amazing. So thank you for tuning into this. Thank you for heading down to Pug Uglies if you were there. And if you are in fact new here and wonder what this thing is, it's a podcast and it will be with you here every week, all going well. Tuesdays, more likely Tuesday evening is when I hopefully will get a pod to you. If you want to get in touch, you can do that. It is kickingmatch@gmail.com. Tell me your musings, your thoughts, your ambitions, maybe even your dreams. You can also do that via various social media platforms. They are Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Although I don't really know how to use TikTok. I just use that maybe twice. Maybe I'll use it more this year. We'll have to find out. But guess what? I've got Kick and Match on all of them. Don't be a hater, be a lover. Follow me on there and say hi. See you next week. We're so back.